Manufactured happiness. It's the best-selling commodity in human history, and nobody realized they bought it. From your very first steps, they taught you that happiness was a prize, something to be reached, conquered, measured. The promise was everywhere, disguised as the future. A toy, a report card, a kiss, then a job, a perfect body, a car, status. But there was always a later, as if joy was waiting up ahead, waiting for your next version, if you feel like you're always chasing happiness. But it never arrives. Maybe you're buying something that was never real. The pursuit of happiness became a market. Advertisements sell lifestyle, but deliver absence. They sold the idea that you need to improve, buy, achieve, display. They sold manufactured happiness that doesn't grow from within, but is imposed from outside. It's no coincidence. It's by design. Because a complete soul doesn't consume. An awakened mind doesn't buy what it doesn't need. That's why they turned emptiness into an industry, and they called the slavery of always needing something freedom. The real prison has no walls. It's called endless desire. If this message is already touching something inside you, click the like button now. This helps the channel continue awakening consciousness around the world. And if you feel tired of this endless race, subscribe. Here, each episode is a glimpse into what's real. Share this with someone who's trying to fill what can't be filled with consumption. And write in the comments, "I'm no longer buying the illusion." This phrase is a choice, a turning point, a silent pact with your own truth. The illusion started early, when they said you'd only be happy later, after the test, after getting approval, after marriage, after owning a home, after retirement. But later never came, and the now always went unnoticed. This is how society shapes consumers. It teaches you to wait, to accumulate, to run, but never to stop, never to feel, never to simply be. Because being doesn't generate profit, feeling doesn't create productivity, and presence is the greatest enemy of a world that profits from your absence. Happiness became a packaged fantasy, and you bought it. Everyone bought it. Not out of ignorance, but programming. Not from weakness, but conditioning. And that's okay. The first step of awakening isn't blaming yourself. It's observing, seeing clearly what was once invisible. The happiness they sold you wasn't yours. It was theirs. It was manufactured, pushed, reinforced. But now you know. And that changes everything. Because once you see, you can't unsee. It wasn't just you. Everyone was trained to seek validation outside themselves. From childhood, smiles were rewarded. Repressed emotions were applauded. Good grades, good behavior, praise for following the script. Gradually, you learned that being accepted was more important than being authentic. And without realizing it, happiness became synonymous with approval. The gaze of others became your mirror. The system no longer needed to control you with chains. It convinced you that value only exists if someone applauds. And that became routine. You know this. Artificial happiness is fragile. A compliment that doesn't come. A photo that doesn't please. A silence that feels like rejection. And everything crumbles. Because when joy depends on others' approval, it has no roots. That's why manufactured happiness is so sellable. It breaks quickly. And when it breaks, you rush to buy another. Another course, another item, another relationship. All to fill a hole that marketing dug. But the hole only grows larger. because it was designed to be bottomless. External validation is the fuel of illusion. Likes, thumbs up, invitations, titles, diplomas, followers, everything is counted, and every count is an addiction. A game you can never win because the rules always change, and the more you play, the further you get from yourself. Suddenly you're living the life others expect, a performed life, a life full of things, but empty of meaning. And in that emptiness, real happiness can't breathe, because it doesn't shout, it whispers. Have you ever wondered why, even after achieving everything they said would bring joy, you still feel this emptiness? Have you looked in the mirror and thought, but I did everything right, why do I still feel so disconnected? That question is the crack, the break in the matrix. It points to something that can't be bought, can't be shown, can't be posted, because true happiness is quiet, it's intimate, and it doesn't need an audience. Write in the comments, I've questioned myself. Give voice to the doubt that might open your freedom. This system of external validation is subtle. It hides even in your most intimate choices. The haircut, the outfit of the day, the photo you didn't post out of insecurity. Everything passes through an invisible filter. Will they like it? But who are they? And since when does your peace depend on collective approval? When you start to notice how many decisions are influenced by this system, something begins to crumble. And when it completely falls apart, you'll see yourself again, maybe for the first time. The system doesn't just sell products, it sells identities. And you were taught to buy versions of yourself to feel like somebody. You studied to be recognized. You worked to be respected. You fought to be validated. And with each new step, a new promise of happiness, always on the horizon. But it was all part of the same mechanism, manufactured happiness, which requires you to keep reinventing yourself to meet standards that aren't even yours, with each version purchased further from your essence. The mirror became a showcase, and you, the salesperson of your own image. You learned to perform, to mask emotions, to shape your body, to say what pleases. All this to appear happy, even without being happy. Society doesn't want you to feel, it wants you to convince. And while your image shines, your soul screams in the dark. It's no wonder many people live tired without knowing why. They're exhausted from maintaining a facade that doesn't reflect who they really are. Each new purchase is an attempt to fill the void with something visible. New clothes, new device, new course, new life. But the void is invisible and cannot be filled with matter. Because what's missing was never a thing. It was presence. It was truth. And these aren't found on shelves. When you realize that self-image became merchandise, the game begins to fall apart. And maybe you'll start asking yourself, who would I be without all this? Existential marketing is silent. It whispers, you're still not enough. And then points out what's missing. A more defined body, a better job, one more degree. It pretends to help, but reinforces the wound. Because as long as you feel incomplete, you'll keep buying. But the paradox is this: the more you buy, the more distant you feel. Manufactured happiness works like this. It never arrives, so you never stop searching. Comment, I'm done buying versions of myself. This phrase can be the first step back to your center. There's nothing wrong with wanting to grow, to evolve, to improve, but when it comes from a hole and not from abundance, everything becomes a race. Anxiety, self-abandonment. Real transformation isn't born from lack, but from presence, from acceptance. When you understand that nothing needs to be purchased to feel whole, a different kind of peace begins to settle in. Silent, unfamiliar, but real. And maybe, just maybe, this is what you've been looking for all along, with no name, no packaging, no price. If there's an invisible programming commanding behaviors, it manifests in this endless race. Running to have, running to be, running not to fall behind. And all this with a smile on your face, as if it were freedom. But it's not. It's the matrix of synthetic happiness, a web built to look like progress, when in reality, it's a maze. Manufactured happiness doesn't want to be achieved. It wants to be chased. Because while you chase it, you don't notice what you already have. This matrix doesn't impose itself with force. It seduces. It shows success stories, perfect lives, before and after. It says you can too, if you try harder, buy more, change more. And then you enter the cycle, set a goal, dedicate yourself, achieve it, and soon feel the emptiness return. Why? Because the system was made for this. It profits from your dissatisfaction. Each new achievement is a stimulus for the next package of desire. And desire here isn't freedom, it's prison. You don't realize you're inside until you start questioning, why am I always tired? Why does nothing satisfy me for long? Why does happiness always seem delayed? These questions are cracks, small flaws in the code, and through them, light begins to enter. Maybe you're inside a collective mental programming where everyone runs but nobody arrives, where everyone smiles but few feel, and where feeling too much is treated as weakness. The modern matrix doesn't need guards. It feeds on comparison, on performance, on the fear of not being enough. But enough for whom? By what standard? When you start to see that you live to meet invisible expectations, everything shakes. And that's good, because every awakening begins with discomfort. Write in the comments, I'm leaving the cycle. Let this phrase work as a silent cry of inner liberation, a reminder that you can stop, you can breathe, you can choose another path. If happiness became synonymous with performance, then we're trapped. Because no matter how much you do, there will always be something more. And in that something more, you lose yourself, you forget, you exhaust yourself. But there is a way out, simple but radical. Stop, observe, recognize that you don't need to earn the right to feel good. It's already yours. It doesn't depend on applause, on goals, on approval. And when this is deeply understood, the code begins to break and the real begins to emerge. At the heart of the matrix, there's a silent industry that transforms suffering into business. It observes your weaknesses, your pains, your insecurities, and packages them as opportunity. The promise is now different. Buy this course and you'll be confident. Acquire this method and you'll be fulfilled. Marketing has learned to sell not just happiness, but also overcoming. And so, even emptiness became a product. This is manufactured happiness, repackaged as a miraculous solution. But true miracles have no price. This factory of promises doesn't want to heal. It wants to build loyalty. It needs you to come back. It needs the wound not to close completely, just enough for you to keep needing more. There's nothing wrong with seeking help. The mistake is believing that your liberation is in the next package, the next video, the next step being sold. True transformation begins where there is no charge, where there is no rush, where there is no one saying, "You'll only be happy after this." The words have changed, but the structure is the same. In the past, they sold products. Now they sell emotional states. Happiness became a subscription. Self-esteem became a marketing tool. Inner life became a trend. But this isn't spirituality. This is market. And the market needs you to keep feeling incomplete. Only then will you buy. Only then will you return. And for that reason, it never gives you the key. It distracts you with pretty packaging, but doesn't show you the door. Have you ever felt like you're always starting over? A new habit, a new routine, a new awakening. But everything seems like repetition with different names. Maybe it's because they're selling a path that can only be walked, without a guide, without a formula, without a package. Real happiness doesn't fit in a schedule. It can't be outsourced. And the moment you realize this is the moment something in you breaks free. Comment, "I am not a customer of my own emptiness." Feel the symbolic weight of that phrase. True happiness doesn't need a showcase. It doesn't want to be shown. It wants to be lived. There is no course, guru, or technique that can replace your presence. Everything that is true won't leave you dependent. It will return you to yourself. It will empower you to stop searching. And when you stop, you might discover that the deepest joy is silent, and that what you've always been looking for was never out there. It was just waiting for you to turn inward. If manufactured happiness is loud, true presence is silence. It doesn't need a soundtrack, an effect, an announcement. It simply is. While the manufactured happiness industry shouts, "You need this to be happy," presence whispers, "You already are." But this voice is subtle, and in a world saturated with stimuli, it gets lost. That's why stopping is revolutionary. Breathing, looking inward, refusing to run. All of this is resistance, and all resistance begins with awareness. Nobody profits from your inner peace. That's why it's not promoted. It doesn't appear on billboards. It doesn't earn likes. But when experienced, even if for seconds, it changes everything. Because in it, there is no lack, no search. There is only the now, pure, naked, sufficient. And it's in this now that you can, for the first time, rest from being someone. Rest from appearing happy, and simply feel. Real happiness doesn't need a stage. It flourishes where no one sees. Have you noticed how the most authentic moments weren't planned? An unexpected sunset, a spontaneous laugh, a silent hug. None of them were purchased, none of them had a goal. And yet, they were the most real. Genuine happiness can't be explained. It happens, but for that, you need to be there. You need to be whole, not fragmented between expectations and distractions. Being present is the forgotten art of the modern era, and maybe it's the only thing they haven't tried to sell you yet. Presence is subversive because it breaks the cycle of dissatisfaction. When you're present, you need nothing, and that threatens the system, because the system lives off your absence. It feeds on your anxiety, your comparison, your rush. But when you pause, look around, take a deep breath, and feel what is, without trying to change it, something happens. You come home. And in that quiet home, happiness isn't a product, it's a natural state. Comment: today I return to myself. Let this phrase be a sacred reminder. Happiness isn't a destination, it's a point of contact, an internal state that emerges when you stop running, and even if the outside world keeps spinning, something inside you can rest. It's not conformity, it's wisdom, knowing there's nothing to prove, achieve, display. There is only now, this instant where everything is whole, and when you find this, manufactured happiness loses its power, because you've returned to the center. And the center isn't for sale, the center simply is. For years you lived a script written by others, an invisible script that told you how to behave, what to achieve, how to feel. A script with predefined lines, expected scenes, generic happy endings. But now, this plot begins to seem strange, as if it no longer represents you. And maybe you'll realize that you're playing a character to fit into a world that doesn't know your truth. Manufactured happiness is this: a ready-made script sold as freedom. Breaking from this script isn't easy. It's been repeated so many times that it's become comfortable, familiar, but also tight, limited. The discomfort you feel may not be failure. It may be your spirit trying to remind you of who you were before the performance, before the demands, before the comparison. It's natural to feel fear, because leaving the script means leaving collective approval. But that's where the authentic path begins, where the new can finally be born. You don't need permission to change. You don't need to wait for everything to be right to start living differently. Life isn't a theater play. It doesn't need an audience or applause. It needs presence and courage. Courage to unlearn what they taught you about happiness. Courage to say no to what doesn't make sense, even if everyone else says yes. Comment: I write my own script. Write as one who affirms, as one who authorizes themselves to truly exist. It's liberating to realize that you can choose. You can choose what to feel, what to accept, what to refuse. Freedom isn't having all options. It's saying, this no longer serves me, with firmness and peace. When you recognize what's noise, silence gains value. When you refuse to continue on autopilot, consciousness expands. And in this expansion, manufactured happiness loses its shine, because you no longer want what shines. You want what pulses. And if you get lost in the process, that's okay. Deconstruction takes time. It takes doubts. But each step outside the script is an invisible achievement, a return home. The world will continue to offer shortcuts, formulas, promises. But now you know, what's real isn't for sale. What's real has no marketing. What's real just is. When you begin to write your own story, there's no more room for manufactured happiness. There's room for you, and that's enough. Manufactured happiness is a performance. True happiness is a state of being. It doesn't depend on stimulus. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't require you to change who you are. On the contrary, it's born in the moment you fully accept yourself, even imperfect, even incomplete. Because in that moment, you stop resisting. And when you stop resisting, you discover something profound. You were already everything you were looking for. You just weren't present enough to see it. Don't wait any longer to allow yourself to feel. Life won't hand you a certificate saying you now have the right to be happy. That right has always been yours. It doesn't depend on one more step, one more achievement, one more product. And when you truly understand this, a new lightness enters, a kind of silence that doesn't weigh you down, an emptiness that doesn't hurt, an internal space where finally you can breathe, and in that breath, everything changes. If you felt something in this video, something you can't name but that touch deep inside, then don't ignore it. That feeling is your center moving. It's the real calling. Maybe you don't know what to do with it right now, but know that this is the beginning. The simple act of seeing the false is already an act of liberation. Write in the comments, "My happiness is not for sale." Let this phrase be your anchor, your manifesto, your reclaimed truth. If this message touched your heart, like this video now. This allows more people to discover that there is life beyond the script. And if you're not subscribed yet, join us. We don't sell formulas here. We offer glimpses, spaces to breathe, reflections for those tired of the illusion and wanting to return to what's real. Because in the end, the greatest revolution is this: recognizing that nothing needs to be added for you to be whole. Real happiness isn't in what's missing. It's in everything that has always been within.